Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the transit Mercury in Virgo. Well, okay, when Mercury enters Virgo, of course, it's making its transition from Mercury in Leo. And Mercury in Leo is about, of course, a lot of talking that with a lot of self-assuredness and a lot of confidence. But with Mercury in Virgo, the transit, people are a little bit more prudent and cautious when they speak because this is an earth sign after all. And it's really, they want to word what they say very carefully. The Mercury in Leo, things are a little bit more dramatized and sometimes embellished. And really, Virgo is really just strongly about the facts. In Mercury transiting Virgo, people are a lot more about mental analysis. And really, as far as correction goes, I mean, Virgo is notorious for correcting things, correcting people even, and people can be in their speech a little bit more judgmental and critical than ordinarily during this transit. At the same time, this transit can be very favorable and auspicious for doing things that are connected with correcting. And it could be like somebody that works as like a proofreader or some editor, and somebody that kind of oversees things. And even just managers in general will often oversee what the subordinate workers are doing. And this could be a time where they could give their constructive criticism, and it could be very favorable for that and going over in the right manner. And anyway, it's also a period, though, where when you look at the Mercury transiting Virgo, I think what's interesting is that when Mercury transits Virgo, it's often at a time, at least in the United States, when kids are either they're starting school or it's very near a point when they start school. And this could be a period where when Mercury is transiting Virgo, it could be that time where parents are making this list to get these scholastic items for their children. And Virgo, of course, I mean, is a sign. It's ruled by Mercury. It's connected with intellect. It has to do with learning and assimilating information. And it's about, I mean, you see the people going to the store, shopping for school supplies for their kids. And Virgo is also about being very punctual. And the mind during this time, people might have their mind set on being very timely for things. And even if you have a friend or someone or some colleague that's notoriously late for things, it's interesting because even that person might be a little bit more timely than usual, and he or she might actually surprise you during this transit. And really, too, it's about when you speak, it's Mercury in Virgo. Really, it's about saying things in a very careful and prudent manner, saying things with a lot of exactitude, with a lot of details, and saying things in the proper manner. Our minds are more, we're often more systematic and methodical during this time and more organized mentally. Now, the thing about it is, in Virgo, of course, being the opposite sign of Pisces, now the mind during this time collectively may not be as imaginative as usual. It's really more, people are just dealing strongly with the bare facts and the bare figures during this time. People could be very wordy and pedantic as well during this time. And another thing, too, about Mercury transiting Virgo, I think is interesting, that Virgo is the sign associated with work and the workaholic. And often during this transit, it's either at a time when people are coming back, a lot of people coming back from their summer recess or vacation or what have you, and they're ready to start work again. And the mind can be strongly dominated and focused on work during this time, and I find that very interesting. People are coming back from their breaks, and all of a sudden it's really strongly about working during this time. And the thing about this Mercury transiting Virgo, it's really could be strongly about extrapolation of data during this period. And I mean, it's good for people during this time. Often when Mercury transits Virgo, it's often at the time when fantasy football may begin for the regular season, or it may be near that time when it begins. And fantasy football, as many of you may know that are interested, that are fantasy football enthusiasts or what have you, a lot of this has to do with projection of data and taking stats from past years and projecting it. A lot of it based on past stats. People come up with what they project for their stats for these players for this particular season. So, and I think that a lot of it has to do with a lot of that Virgo energy, because you've got the Sun in Virgo during that time, and very often Mercury in Virgo at least in that same general period anyway. So those are some things to look at as far as this transit of Mercury goes. And also, I think there's a little more of a tendency for people to be a little bit more worrisome during this time. Virgo is a sign that is associated with worry, and even people that are generally very calm, composed, and collected might get a little bit more frazzled and anxious than usual during this period. But the thing about it too is to really be careful not to be overly critical of others and being too nitpicky and looking at others' flaws during this time, because that is an unfortunate tendency of this time. And really, another thing too with Mercury transiting Virgo, it's a time where people want to be often they're thinking and doing things in the most scrupulous manner, and it could be very auspicious for people that are in jobs that require attention to detail. Even people working in forensics have to be detail-oriented. Data entry, working in coding are some examples, and people might be more interested in brain teasers and in doing things connected with intellectual stimulation during this time. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the transit Mercury in Virgo, and stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about the transit Mercury in Libra. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.